Hello everyone, welcome back to the Story Rift. So I finished Wind and Truth, and it's pretty controversial, but let's get into it. So my thoughts on this series have kind of changed over time. I really love the first three novels, but then with Rhythm of War, I gotta be honest, I really didn't like Rhythm of War. I thought it was pretty boring and not well written. I don't know, it lost me, so I was, a little skeptical going into this book for the most part, especially since since it took me so long to read this book, I kind of, I try to avoid looking at people's opinions, but it's just kind of like, when everybody's read the book before me, so long before me, it's just kind of difficult not to see what everybody else is saying about it. So the plot of this novel is messy at best. A really controversial point, at least that I saw from what people were saying online, was the 10 like the 10-day structure of the novel. I have to kind of agree with that. It is very messy. It's not that there aren't good parts, and I enjoyed most of my time reading the novels. It was just sometimes it was very disorienting, just having like the 10-day thing, and some plot lines felt rushed, and then some plot lines kind of like felt like they weren't progressing enough, and it was just kind of a difficult balance to make, and I don't think it really worked that well. So at the start of the novel, like every novel, starts off pretty slow. Everybody's kind of at Irithiru. I can't say that name, but you know what I'm saying. And it's like a basic start to a novel. Pretty similar to all the other ones. It's kind of like they all start in the same place, and then they go. That's simplified, but you know what I'm saying. They kind of go to their own separate places, and I found that once all the characters were kind of in the right spots in their own plot lines. Kaladin was Seth, and you had like Adeline and Azir, and obviously that there's also that plot. A lot of the main plot also focuses around Dalinar and Navani, and also Shallan and Renarin and Rain. I believe it's. I don't know if I'm saying their names right, but they're all kind of in that. They go back in time, which I'm not really a big fan of the whole, like time travel plot. It wasn't really time travel, but I just, that was something I wasn't a big fan of. I don't know. I really like Dalinar's character, so it kind of carried it a little bit, but still wasn't a huge fan of that kind of plot. I really like the idea of all these like wars happening at the same time. It really, it makes the book feel very intense, and it added a lot more. It felt very driven compared to Rhythm of War. It kind of felt like it fixed some of my problems with Rhythm of War, where it was kind of like sometimes meandering and not very, action packed, for lack of a better term. I also really love the fight scenes in this novel, especially Azir. I think the Adeline plotline is probably my favorite. I'll go into the characters a little bit later, but yeah, definitely the Azir plotline. Where the plot kind of bogs down for me is when we get into all the heralds and the more cosmic elements. I don't know. For me, the heralds are interesting on paper, but in execution, I just don't really think there's enough that defines them. Because there's a lot of heralds, and I can't really tell many of them apart. Like I know Taln, I believe that's his name. He has a little more character development, but the rest of them, they just kind of fade into one, and it made a lot of like the flashback sequences just not very interesting because like I just really wasn't into the heralds aspect of it. I really think that's what made The Way of Kings really good, was it was a very contained story, and I feel like the more we're moving into the more cosmic plot, the more the novels are kind of losing me. The whole Odium or Taravangian, I'm probably saying that wrong. I don't know. I hate fantasy novels. So they have those complicated words, and I'm like, oh man, I'm a dipshit. But no, I mean, I don't know. The Taravangian plot was Taravangian's character. God, I hate that name. It's so difficult to say. His character. It was kind of interesting. It kind of lost me, to be honest. Halfway through the novel, I don't know. He kind of, I don't know. He came off as kind of like a spoiled. I don't know, not spoiled, but just kind of, I don't know, very. I don't know. I think Taravangian just kind of like in the whole Odium kind of plot line that they have. I think just my issue with it is I don't think the philosophical debate between him and Dalinar is very interesting. It just never really hit the same way that I think he wanted it. Sanderson wanted it to hit. I just don't think it really did it for me. Now, as for the characters, Kaladin was much better in this novel. I think in Rhythm of War, he kind of has this. He kind of became a little stale. It kind of felt very repetitive, but having him travel with Zeph, I think really helped. It kind of, I don't know, make his character. It was a good setting for his character to be in, and very good for his development. And while a lot of his, I don't know, him trying to show Zeph a better way to live was kind of, done for and kind of felt samey. I thought it was really interesting, and there was some good emotional moments in it, which I think is one of the things that, for me, Sanderson doesn't hit the emotional moments as much. So with Seth and Kaladin, I thought it was pretty well done for the most part. Seeing Dalinar, try to move his way through the past or whatever to find the answers, it was interesting at times. Like I said before, it's just with the heralds and all that. I just wasn't really engaged with the plot. But it was nice to see Dalinar a little more in this novel, even though his overall plot and what he was involved in just wasn't great for me. Now, as for Adolin, like I think I mentioned before, but yeah, I really liked him in Azir, especially when he's talking with Yanagon, I think that's what it's called. I'm probably saying that wrong. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get roasted in the comments, but yeah, I really liked his relationship with Yanagon, and the whole Azir part was really interesting to me. I mean, I kind of agree with people when they say that they really didn't like when Adolin was just moping about Dalinar, his father. Yeah, I don't know. I could definitely tell why. I could definitely see why some people would really not like that. It didn't bother me that much, but I think that was just because it was like a line here and there. But I could see why it would upset some people. Now we get to Shallan. Oh man, I really liked Shallan in the first like 3 books, and then I don't know. She suffers the same problem I think Kaladin did in Rhythm of War, where it's like she's really just going through the motions again. With all of her pain of her family's past and just her past in general. I don't know. It felt very stale. It's kind of. I feel like Sanderson, his biggest problem with this series is like characters don't go on an arc. They go up, but then they kind of like flatline for a novel or two, and then he finally tries to do something with them. I just feel like, yeah, there's a lot of characters in the novel, but I feel like there's a series that, had a lot of characters, like The Wheel of Time or something like that, but they actually flesh out their characters. I just don't think, with the way that he writes the Stormlight Archive, the character development doesn't work for me that much. It feels like we have to put characters on hold, and unfortunately, that was the case for Shallan in this. She was already getting kind of stale in the 4th book, but in this novel, it's really like, man, whew. Also, not really a fan of Jasnah in this novel. I don't know. I was never a huge fan of her. I mean, I really liked her in the 1st book. Her whole debate with Taravangian, her whole debate with Taravangian was just kind of, I don't know, forced. I really didn't like it either, which I think that's a consensus online, is that whole debate thing was kind of ham-fisted, and I don't know, it really wasn't that great. I think her plot in this novel could have been, I think her character in this novel could have really been well done. It just felt like, with all the different parts that he had to move around in this, I felt like Jasnah just didn't get enough time on the page to kind of flesh out her arc in this story. I don't know. And I think that's something that this novel really suffers from. It's just like it feels very congested. And I think Jasnah's relationship is, and I think Jasnah is just one of those characters that unfortunately gets sidelined a little bit. And then there was Rain and Renarin. I think I'm saying that right. If I'm not, let me know in the comments. I'm not great at spelling, so. But anyways, yeah, they're obviously, spoiler, they have a relationship in this novel. It's fine, I guess. I know a lot of people weren't a big fan of it. I don't mind it that much. I don't know. I'm not going to give him credit, though, for having a gay relationship in the novel, because it's like, I don't know, man. It's 2025. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, okay, there's a gay couple. Who cares? It's not written particularly well, but, it's there. I don't know. It's just like, whatever. I don't know. Now, here I'm going to start talking about a little bit of spoilers. Not too much, but I would definitely not watch this part. I think the setup for this novel really lacked, in my opinion. And I know Sanderson's really known for setup and payoff. And I think the payoff was kind of worth it. I did like the ending with, obviously Dalinar dying, but I kind of like the whole releasing Tarnavagian and, him becoming, I can't remember the name of it, Retribution, yeah. I thought that was really interesting, and I think it set up the next novel pretty well. But I think the setup, everything leading up to that, could have been really improved. And I don't know if maybe his editors just aren't giving him feedback, or if he's just not listening to his editors. But I really felt like this novel could have been condensed a little more, which that's a problem I think a lot of fantasy novels like this have. Also, Shallan being stuck in Shadesmar, I think that's how you say it. I think that was really good too. I think that's an interesting place to take her character, and it might help kind of soothe some of the, you know, negative opinions I have of her character arc so far. I think it might breathe fresh air into her character. That's much needed in my opinion. I think the same goes for Adeline. With him losing his leg and without the Stormlight, I don't know if he can, repair his leg anymore. I think that's a really interesting way to take his character, and it could be really well done. Obviously, if he writes it well. I'm not really sure about that whole Kaladin becoming like the king of the heralds or whatever. It's fine. I don't have any harsh opinions on it. It's just kind of something that happened. But I don't know. I think his journey through this novel was more interesting than the end, if that makes sense. So out of 10, I'd probably give this novel like a 6, maybe a 5 if you ask me. If you ask me next week. I think the two big issues with this novel is one, the 10-act structure. I think it really lessens the character development, and it doesn't hit the emotional beats as much as it could have because of the way it's set up. And for the second, I think it was just the setup was just not as good as it was in previous novels. The payoff was decent, but I feel like everything leading up to it could have been really hammered down and maybe edited a little better. I think the last big thing I'll say is something that really bothers me about this novel is that the emotional beats just aren't really hitting as much as they used to. I don't know, maybe that's just because I feel like a lot of the characters are becoming kind of stale and repetitive, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, like, Dalinar's death, spoiler, was, I felt something at that when he died, but it wasn't like, nothing else in the novel that happened emotionally really resonated with me. But I'm still excited for the next novels, and I honestly think that the way that he ended this novel will really set up the next one pretty good if he can kind of rein himself in a little bit. I think the next novel could be really good. But anyways, that was my thoughts. If you disagree, agree with me, let me know in the comments, and subscribe and like if you want. So yeah, sorry for that hiatus, but I'm back. I don't know how consistent the videos will be, but I definitely know like 2 videos that I'm really wanting to do is one, a full ranking of the Stormlight Archive so far. That one's definitely coming out. I've also been toying with an idea of ranking the Halo campaigns. It'll be a little different, obviously, from my literary stuff, but it might be more similar to like my Castlevania Nocturne review. So I don't know if it'll be camera facing. I might actually record gameplay for that and just talk over it. So that might be in the future. But anyway, with that all out of the way, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.